Hey, I'm Anthony Romano, and this video is going to tell you the differences between slow carb dieting and ketogenic dieting. And ultimately, it's going to tell you which form is going to be best for you and what the solutions are to each of the problems you might encounter on either of these dieting regimes. So, before I get into this, I have a ketone giveaway. I'm giving away free ketones. Look in the description for the rules. And also, I'd encourage you to like this video because if you do, that's going to allow my video to be seen by other people who probably have similar interests to you. So that's all you have to do to help me out and get other people to see my videos more. And the YouTube algorithm likes that, and I like it. So if you can do that, like the video, subscribe, and also follow my Instagram, I think there's going to be a load of value being given to you there on a regular basis. Let's get into the video. Okay, so let's hop into this and explain the slow carb diet. So what the slow carb diet is, it's basically a diet of low glycemic carbs where you basically cut out all the breads, the starches, and sugars and candies, of course, all that stuff that you would associate as carbs, but you also leave in some of these legumes, some beans, some small amounts of lower glycemic wheats and things like that. So basically you're eating a very, very low carb diet, but you're still keeping some carbs in place. So your daily total of carbs might add up to something like 100, something around there. It might be a bit less. Some days it might be a bit more some days, but you're basically eating that way. And it's some days you'll be very much crossing into the keto metabolism, which is what happens when you cut out carbs altogether. And basically that's when your body starts running on fat as the primary fuel. So when we're looking at the slow carb diet, there's also one thing that happens every weekend. The slow carb diet allows you to have basically a binge carb day every weekend. Binge is perhaps a word that I don't think is the best that people would use to describe this, but you do have an unlimited carb day on every weekend, perhaps a Saturday, where basically you can eat all the carbs you want. So you can eat essentially, whatever the hell it is you like. And that is a form of the slow carb diet that was popularized by Tim Ferriss, or at least, well, maybe that is the form how it was originally created, but Tim Ferriss, who is one of my favorite authors of all time, and I've read absolutely every single one of his books since I was like maybe 13 or 14, that's one of the forms that he uses, and I made a video on that explaining basically the slow carb diet. But the slow carb diet, it's useful for cutting down body fat, for putting on some muscle mass, but I have a couple key problems with it. So before I get into the problems, I'm going to explain the keto diet first because that will remedy some of the problems as I'm explaining them. The keto diet is basically you cut out all carbohydrates, and what happens is your body, like I said, is running on body fat. That's its primary fuel. Now, when we're looking at the main difference between that and the slow carb diet, you're not consuming any of these, moderately glycemic carbs. You're not consuming legumes, you're not consuming carrots, some simple starches. You're not consuming those things even in small quantities. They're simply out of the picture. Now, granted, some people will tell you that in order to do a ketogenic diet, you have to crank the fats up to the moon. That is not true. All you have to do to be in the ketogenic fat-burning metabolism is remove carbohydrates. Granted, you can have as much green vegetables as you like, so whether you like them or not, you can have endless amounts. They're never going to raise your blood sugar. But moderately low glycemic starches will, so legumes, things of that nature, small bits of wheat, and lower glycemic bread. So glycemic, by the way, it simply means how quickly the sugar is going to enter your bloodstream. And the number one problem for ketogenic metabolism is having the blood sugar go too high. That is what's going to halt the fat metabolism and basically halt your body using its own body fat stores as the primary fuel. So even after me simply explaining that, it seems like there's an inherent, benefit to keto over slow carb. But a lot of the reason people will use slow carb is because they believe it is more, practical. They believe it's easier to do because they think of it linearly. They think of it as, keto diet has people eating around, under 40, 50 carbs a day, and they're only from vegetables. But slow carb allows me to have closer to 100. That's going to be easier, right? That's not technically true because the way I always explain it is that your body, when you communicate to your body that it's on a carb metabolism, so like the slow carb would have it for the most part, your body is going to get used to having carbs as the primary fuel. And if you simply give it low amounts of the preferred fuel at the time, you're not going to feel good. It will feel like a diet. It will feel taxing and it will require some willpower. So essentially, Keto is a very black and white thing. It's very much you either jump into the deep end of the pool or you don't. And a lot of my recommendations for people who are doing these low carb diets, which by the way I've been doing for 9 years at this point straight, and I've done every sort of other technique you can think of, watch my other videos. The main problem is that your body doesn't care what kind of fuel it's on. It simply wants to know, and it wants a good amount of energy. It wants adequate energy. So when you communicate to your body that it's on carbs and you give it a low amount, you're going to feel hungry and perhaps a bit mentally fatigued, a little bit cranky. When you go into keto, the first few days, the first 3 days are going to be hard because it's a big change for your body. But after that point, your body gets the message, oh, we're running on fat and we have an abundance of fat to use. Even if you're like 10% body fat, you have thousands upon thousands of calories of fuel to use, and your body will be comfortable with that. And that is why people never shut the hell up about how, full and satisfied they feel on keto approaches and how mentally smooth everything goes, because there's simply no resistance from the body there. It's not thinking, oh shit, we're low on fuel, guys, we need more carb, right? Because you're not even allowing it to remain in a carb metabolism. So that's ultimately the main problem with slow carb. But I'm going to give you a solution if you are even inclined to doing some sort of slow carb diet. So don't leave just yet. The main problem, like I said, is that you're not allowing your body to get into actual ketosis in a, practical manner, in a manner that's actually going to benefit you, where you start to notice how good everything feels. But the main point I want to hammer home here is that doing a slow carb diet or a low carb diet that's not quite ketogenic is actually harder than keto. It's not easier simply because you're just thinking of the total carb amount and thinking, oh, well, there's less carbs on keto, so that's going to be harder. It's not that way at all. It's actually easier because your body gets the message and it has an abundance of fuel. That's what you're communicating to your body. Now, the way you remedy this problem is through carb backloading techniques and targeted keto techniques. So I will explain those in a moment. First, before you can do any of those tactics, I will explain the last problem with slow carb. The last problem with slow carb, so that dynamic where your carbs are low but they're not quite ketogenic, is that you're not actually going to become adapted to a low carb state that way. So not only is it going to be hard, but it's going to keep in place your reliance on carb metabolism. When somebody does a keto diet for a month or so, generally that's the number that gets adaptation in place for most people, their body will no longer have any sort of resistance with maintaining keto dieting. They're completely no longer dependent on carbohydrates, and you won't be going through your day hungry all the time, going to sleep hungry, cranky after, when you're hangry. That stuff doesn't happen. And it's because you relieve your body of the dependence on sugar as the primary fuel. So you cannot get that from a slow carb diet. Granted, somebody could do a keto diet and then transition into a slow carb diet, and that would be totally fine. They would not be dependent on sugar. But the point is, you cannot get that independence from sugar by doing slow carb dieting. It's going to keep your reliance on sugar in place. And that is the fundamental problem that I have with it. So my solution to this is carb backloading, targeted keto, after somebody has done a keto approach. So in my eyes, anytime somebody wants to do a low carb diet of any sort, you absolutely need to get your body relieved of the dependence on sugar first. So the way you do that is by doing a keto diet, strict, only carb source from vegetables, green vegetables, however much you wanted them or don't. And you're going to do that for a month. For some people, it might take 5 weeks, 6 weeks, maybe even up to 8 weeks. But for most people, they're adapted by 4 weeks, and you're no longer going to be dependent on carbs at all. And let me remind you, if you're new to this, it's only going to suck for the first 3 days, okay? Your ability to do keto dieting will get better and better as each week goes on, but you're not going to be hungry after about day 3 or 4 for most people. Now, back to the remedy to the slow carb diet, if that's something you find is optimal for you or that you find appealing. Carb backloading is basically timing your carbohydrates after workouts. And the benefit of that is if you keep the low carb state, so basically you're not consuming any carbs until after a workout, if you keep that keto state in place for the most beginning of the day, you're going to be diving right into fat stores, you're going to be churning up fat as fuel, and basically you're going to be strengthening your insulin sensitivity to basically have a higher anabolic response to muscle building and basically to uptaking protein and also carbohydrates as glycogen into your muscles. So the remedy to that slow carb scenario is get keto adapted first for a month. This is non-negotiable. And you do it right. There's no fruits at all, okay? Because they have the type of sugar that goes to your liver. It's called fructose, and that delays entry to ketosis. And that's also something that's not allowed on slow carb either. But the thing is, you need to do keto for a month, and then after that point, you can start integrating carbohydrates of even the junk food kind as often as you want, as long as it's after workouts. So basically, if you're talking balanced lifestyle, how hard is it to simply eat a fatty breakfast with protein throughout the beginning part of the day, work out, and then after that you get to eat the carbs you want, and they work for you better than they would have if you hadn't have already strengthened that ability to uptake insulin from the morning style of eating, or the ketogenic eating, from the keto adaptation, which is enhancing your fat burning and your ability to uptake amino acids, because keto dieting will increase your insulin sensitivity. But what you're going to do is you get that adaptation in place, and from there you have the freedom to use carbs as much as you want. You're not only limited to one day on weekends where you're probably going to binge and eventually crash diet anyways. You're not going to be feeling like crap throughout the entire week when you're eating small amounts of carbs but not low enough to get into the keto deep end of the pool. And essentially that is the solution. You could also use targeted keto, which is using the carbs before a workout. So essentially you could wake up, maybe if you want to fast a bit, maybe if you don't. Either way, you have high glycemic sugar, so even junk food, but provided you watch my video on carb backloading and targeted keto so you know what junk foods are actually bad for you. You basically use those high glycemic carbs before a workout, you get a better workout performance, and you've used those carbs up right away after the workout's done, and you're in a much better place than if you had simply done it through the slow carb, approach. So my ultimate remedy to slow carb is, rather than doing that and hopping right into it, I mean, it is totally fine if you're already adapted and you want to go into that, but not many people want to do that after they've been adapted to keto. That's actually the primary indicator I say to people that indicates that you are adapted. When you don't care about carbs, that's when you have the freedom to have as much as you like. So you get adapted, you then start off your day keto, and then work out, and then have whatever carbs you want, or you get adapted to keto, then you wake up, you have your carbs whenever you like, and then you work out afterwards. And then you could also have some afterwards if you like. So basically you're using your carbs strategically around workout performances so that you're never having a surplus of carb, glycogen basically, and glucose in your bloodstream. And that will keep you metabolically adapted. It will strengthen your insulin response to anabolic muscle building processes. And of course it will allow you to churn through fat all day long without being hungry, without, going to bed ready to bite your arm off, okay? So that is the ultimate solution to slow carb, and it comes from mixing the two approaches, which is ultimately my recommendation for most people to do keto dieting. Is not because I think they have to do it all the time year round like I do. I encourage people to do it because it's a technique you need your body to be good at, to increase your metabolic health, and from there it will strengthen muscle building responses, it will enhance fat burning, and basically it can be a good backdrop to your life. You can do it, and then from after getting that adaptation in place, you have the freedom to incorporate carbs in your lifestyle as much as you please. And that is ultimately what I recommend for people, because you can figure that out for yourself, how often you want to have certain foods, and it will help you to get away with it more when you have that keto adaptation in place first. So from there, the ball's in your court. You figure out how much you and how often you want to have carbs, but getting that keto adaptation in place first is life-changing. So that is it for this video. I encourage you to like it, subscribe, follow my Instagram, and go to my website, romanoketo.com, if you want to look up the programs I'm writing. They're going to be out soon. I'm going to be releasing loads of books next year. That's my goal. And I have plenty of other videos for free on these topics that you can look up as well. And also, if you want to win some free ketones, go to the description and read the rules and join. That is it. I've only had one cup of coffee today. Thank you for watching. Anthony Romano. Peace.